Hello and welcome to Weekly MTG. I'm one of your hosts, Blake.
And I am also here. I'm Steve.
Steve is also here.
I'm always also here.
This week we're talking Hall of Fame.
Yeah, it's really cool. Hall of Fame voting has begun. People are putting together their ballots. It's a really exciting time of year.
Yeah, but first, before we get to that, I just want to recap some of the news that we've had this week. We're going to start the show talking about some of the news items every week, I think, because a lot's happening right now.
Yeah, it's like a in case you missed it Magic Edition.
And if you missed it this week, we launched our, internally we've been calling it the Home Tournament Organizer, but it's Magic the Gathering Companion, the app.
It's an open beta, available on iOS via Test Flight and Android via the Google Play Store.
Yep, absolutely. So the app right now, the goal with the app is to build it in front of the players. Currently, it is, as I said, a home tournament organizer. Now, the reason that's not the name is because it eventually will be so much more.
It will be a true companion.
It will be a true companion app. But head to dailymtg.com and you can see an article from earlier this week, or you can also go to Hipsters of the Coast, which also on Monday published an article about that.
Yep.
The other big news item that happened at the beginning of this week is that we announced, actually Epic announced that
Straight out of Gamescom.
Straight out of Gamescom, that Magic the Gathering Arena is coming to the Epic Store. It's not going to be exclusive to the Epic Store. You can still download it and play it normally as you do right now. But it's going to be on the Epic Store and available to that customer base as well. And additionally, which made a lot of people happy.
Yeah, me
it
included.
is also coming to Macs.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we don't
not like MAX, not to the max, like Macintosh.
I mean, it is
Apple
also
computers,
coming to the Macs,
Yeah.
but Macintosh computers,
yeah.
it will be available to play on Macs sometime later.
Yeah.
We don't know.
yet.
We didn't do a
Yeah.
specific date, but that was the big news from Monday. The other bit of news is Grand Prix Las Vegas is kind of already getting underway.
Yeah, first day was today.
Grand Prix
You're going.
Grand Prix Commander is what I'm calling it.
GP Commander.
GP Commander.
Magic Fest Commander.
Magic Fest Commander, because effectively the Commander zone is going to be about as big as a decent-sized Grand Prix.
I expect a full report when you get back on the command zone at Magic Fest
Absolutely.
Las Vegas. I'm really excited to hear about it.
Yeah, and
I know you're really excited to go.
And I'm going to be at the Commander party on Friday evening.
Look at you.
So really looking forward to this weekend. Some people are already there, already playing Commander.
Including people from this building.
Already playing other formats too. It's a really cool event. So if you're not going, you can also follow coverage. Check out channelfireball.com for that. And otherwise, it's a really exciting weekend.
Yeah, so if you see Blake, say hi.
Yeah.
Ask him how much he loves the counterspell render silent.
I don't.
Do that. Please ask him.
I don't
Ask him
even
as
I don't
many
even
times
like
as
casting.
possible.
It's not fun. You're not fun, Steve.
That is inherently false. But yeah, we have a great show today.
Yeah, we're going to talk, as we said, about the Hall of Fame, which we're super excited about.
Hall of Fame.
And so we're going to go through.
Whoa.
What?
Did you guys say Hall of Fame?
Yeah.
Who's?
What?
Yeah,
I literally.
How did you get in here?
Hall of Fame today.
Come on. So Paul Cheon.
Paul Cheon is here, apparently.
Heard us talking about the Hall of Fame.
Just about this.
Just because your desk is right there doesn't mean.
Put on a microphone
get a
so
mic.
they can actually.
I overhear you guys talk about it, so I really just want to make sure you guys didn't mess this up.
That's
Surprise,
fair.
that's
fair.
So.
Surprise! Paul Cheon is going to come talk about the Hall of Fame with us. Our first.
Hall of Fame.
The Paul of Fame. The Paul of Fame is a very different Paul.
No. But you can be in the Paul of Fame.
I will be in the Paul of Fame.
Yeah,
I have to be a top five
Paul.
Top five Paul.
Yeah.
Well, Paul?
See, look. Paulo doesn't count. That's his name's
Paulo
Paulo.
doesn't count.
Paulo
Okay.
doesn't
fair.
count. That is not
That's
a Paul.
fair.
I mean, you do go in and out of the top five in the Cheon rankings.
Yeah, that's the Cheon rankings are far more competitive than the Paul rankings. To be fair, though. So, yeah.
Okay. Well, all right. Great. Paul's
Special
here.
guest Paul Cheon.
Hall of
Cheon.
Fame. Let's go.
Paul, so we're going to go through. We're going to start with the new candidates.
Yeah, 'cause there
year.
are a few.
There are 4 new candidates this year, and then we're going to go through other notable candidates, people who have been getting a lot of conversation, a lot of consideration in the community, and then at the end of the show, we're going to talk about the future of the Hall of Fame.
As you can see from this lovely ticker that our producer has set up at the bottom of the screen.
There are some changes coming, but we're gonna talk about those at the end. Yeah. Let's start first of all with looking at the full roster of players who are available to vote for. We're gonna run through these pretty quick. There's 6 of these slides. So, Paul, if you can, since you surprised us, what's the minimum eligibility for getting in the Hall of Fame? Do you know that off the top of your head?
I believe it's 150 pro points, because I know that's what's required for
Christoph Grigor.
Right, he barely made it there, and I believe that's kind of the minimum requirement. It's also what you need to vote as a former competitive player.
Right.
We of course give votes to other people, but that's what you need from a former competitive player. So 150 points, and you also have to consistently be playing and picking up those pro points as well.
Yes, and you are not eligible until 10 years after you've earned your first pro point.
Exactly. So that could have been a Grand Prix or any other event back in the day. But yes, you basically had to have been playing competitive Magic for 10 years.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, you'll see some people on here have been on the ballot since 2007. Some of them are new in 2019, 2018. So we're going to keep these are just all of the people you could potentially vote for. So today we're gonna pick out a few specific ones and talk about them, the new players and the players who, like I said, have been garnering a lot of conversation and who have a real shot at making it into the Hall of Fame, and who are certainly garnering a lot of discussion, especially on Twitter right now. So let's kick things off with, we're just going to take these in alphabetical order because that's
a good way to do it.
It's the most reasonable way to do it. We're going to start with Jeremy Dezani, former Player of the Year, Jeremy Dezani.
2013-2014 Player of the Year, off of the back of his Pro Tour Theros Championship.
Yeah, he won that one with the Mono Blue Devotion deck, and then that year he also went on to top 8 for GPs, and that was kind of how he got his Player of the Year status. Paul, what are your thoughts on Jeremy?
So I think Jeremy had kind of an amazing breakout year when he kind of won Pro Tour Theros, and he's been kind of a consistent fixture at the Pro Tour events. But the thing that really kind of is glaring here is the fact that he only has 2 top finishes.
Yeah.
And when you look at kind of what the minimum requirement is for kind of being considered into the Hall of Fame, I think a lot of people have kind of a minimum. And I think in my mind, in most people's scenarios, is 4.
Yeah.
4 is kind of the magic number. And then you start adding in community contributions, consistency, how good other peers thought of this player. And I think in terms of that, Jeremy has that. Like, people know that Jeremy is a top-tier elite Magic player. However, those 2 top finishes are the thing that sticks out for me.
Yep. And note, we're putting these as top finishes this year. So we've had a lot of changes to our organized play system over the years, which we're again going to talk about it later in the show. But there are just so many tournaments that are these days that are big and important, but are not Pro Tour top 8s.
Right.
And Paul, you were talking a little bit before the show, even though you totally showed up here by surprise, about how, because you're still very, very tapped into the pro community, how do pros view the different tournaments? You were saying Worlds is like 75% of a pro.
So yeah, I actually just I've been because I locked in my votes today for the Hall of Fame, but before I kind of put my votes in, I reached out to a lot of friends of mine. And yeah, when you look at top finishes, back in the day, people just really looked at Pro Tour top 8s, right? But now we've kind of added a lot of other things to that bucket because moving forward, we have all these different events, and we just need to kind of amalgamate all those things into one thing. So now we have Worlds, we have Invitationals, the Mythic Invitationals, and we have, of course, the Magic Online Series. And at least when I've spoken with a lot of the pros, they still look at the gold standard being, Mythic Championship top 8s, right? So how many total Mythic Championship top 8s do you have? Then you start adding other things on top of that. Now, if you have a top 8 at a World Championships, even that, a lot of the top pros don't consider that the same as a top 8 Pro Tour, because a Pro Tour is a 15-round tournament, and it's got 500 people in it. It's really difficult to make the top 8. Whereas, sure, it's really hard to make it into the World Championships, but there's a lot less people playing. So making the top 8 of that is far easier than making the top 8 of a Pro Tour. So I think the gold standard is Pro Tour top 8s, and then World Championship top 8s. I think people give it kind of somewhere in the range of half a top finish or 0.75 of a top finish. At least when you're trying to calculate, all right, does this person meet the bar in terms of, whether or not I should consider this person in my list? Because, what I did when I was breaking it down was, we had a list of 43 people, and I kind of narrowed it down to around 10 to 12 people, and then I was started looking at all the other things that player has done to kind of contribute to the Magic community, or just overall other results that they've had. Yeah.
So as we go through this, kind of keep an eye on that top finishes number. 4 and 5 is kind of the sort of minimum range you want to be in. Any less than that, and you've got to make a real hard case.
Yeah.
Right.
So next up is someone we don't have to make a real hard case for, Reed Duke. So Reed Duke is considered.
Nobody knows who this is.
He's considered by most to be basically this year's slam dunk. Every year it seems we have one or two just absolute yes. If you don't vote for this one person, you're doing it wrong. Reed is this year's version of that person, Paul.
Yeah, I mean, there's no question, right? Reed has the top finishes. His Pro Tour median is completely off the charts. He's just been a model of consistency and just been a top 10, top 5 player in Magic, for the last 6-7 years.
Yeah.
I mean, he's just been incredible. And yeah, if you don't vote for Reed, I question whether or not you even should have a vote, honestly, because he should be number 1.
Yep.
And then you can make a case for all the other people, but without a doubt, Reed Duke should be in the Hall of Fame. You should vote for Reed.
Model of consistency and just a model. Look at his hair game.
Just a model citizen.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Just
take model and apply it to any
Exactly.
adjective for
And
Reed Duke.
I know a lot of voters don't give a ton of weight to lifetime pro points just because they're often era specific. They can be weighted by just how much you decided to travel to Grand Prix for years. But 530 is an astronomical amount.
That's really large.
Most people that you're going to see in the runnings are going to be in the 300 to 400 range.
Right.
And so 530, when you see a number like that, when you see that it's that high, that much higher than most people, it has to add a little bit of credence to it as well.
So for me, overall lifetime pro points is kind of somewhat of a tiebreaker for me, right? Because oftentimes, like you said, it's geo-specific. If you live in the U.S., you have access to more Grand Prix, so you can easily go to more Grand Prix and you can get more points, right?
Yeah.
That's just what happens. But at the same time, there are other people like Martin Yuza who traveled the world and went to every single one and got 1 billion points too. But I think there's something that can be said for people who have shown a commitment to the game. If you traveled everywhere and gone to all these Grand Prix to pick up all these points, that's a little extra bonus.
Yeah.
But at the same time, if somebody has 10 GP top 8s and 20 GP top 8s, for me, if one person's from Japan, for example, I'm not going to put it that much against that person because it's a lot harder for that person to go to all these Grand Prix and put up those numbers.
Yep. Right. Let's put Reed's slide back up there because I want to tell 2 short bits about the notables at the bottom of his slide. So 2011 Magic Online champion. That's really how Reed got his start. That was how he got onto the Pro Tour. It was really the first big event that Reader Rabbit, as he was known on Magic Online, still is.
Still known, yeah.
Still known.
And on the Magic the Gathering arena.
Yep, that was really his breakout. And then that second place, 2013 Magic World Championship, impressive in and of itself. But notable was that in 2012, he finished dead last. This was, again, the Small Field World Championship. He just got crushed. And it was, he was coming in representing Magic Online Championship. That was how he got his invite, I think I'm remembering that correctly. And then just got crushed in 2012. Made his way back in 2013, proved he belonged there, and not only did he prove it, he then got second, barely losing to Shahar Shenhar in what was actually a very favorable matchup for Reed, to the point where people were writing his name on things.
It was absurd.
Yeah,
he was
insane.
He was up 2-0 in a very good matchup.
Yeah.
And Shahar pieced together just these ridiculous wins with a control deck that had no way to kill any of Reed's hexproof creatures.
Yep.
Reed was playing Boggles, it was modern, and Shahar was playing Jeskai control with a bunch of lightning bolts that did nothing.
Yep.
And somehow Shahar managed to
I watched those matches live, and I still don't understand how it happened.
I did too.
Yeah.
It was one of the craziest finals of a world championship that we've seen.
Yeah.
Oh my! The reverse sweep.
The reverse sweep in a bad matchup.
Yeah.
It's insane.
Just crazy. Just crazy.
But
Reed Duke,
nonetheless, slam dunk Hall of Famer.
Yeah.
I'm not going to talk about who I'm going to vote for on this show. but I'm going to vote for Reed.
Okay,
That's the
I-
only
I-
one.
I-
I'll
none of
say.
us- none of
Because
us
I
are
don't
gonna
want
talk
Paul
about
to take
who
away
vote
my
also be
vote.
voting
Yeah.
for Reed.
Yeah, I don't want
I'll
Paul to
reveal
take
that
away my
one.
vote. All right, next up, we've got Joel Larson.
Yeah.
The Swedish Kibler, as he was known for a while, until he really started putting up a ton of his results and just stood on his own, rather than being a Brian Kibler lookalike. And honestly, I don't really see it, but that was that was his nickname for a while. But then for a while after that, the joke was Kibler was was American Joel Larson, because Joel started putting up a lot of results. But again, only 2 top finishes. He was the Pro Tour Magic Origins champion, and he finished second at Pro Tour Gatecrash. No other top finishes besides that.
Yeah, he's one of those players that likely needs to string together a few more top finishes to be able to get there. But he's had a good amount of success since his victory. He's been on some of the top teams, top testing teams, put up a lot of results. But again, there's a lot of people who've put up a handful of results here and there. You really need to pick up those 4 or 5 top finishes to be considered, I think.
He's certainly capable.
Oh yeah,
but just not there yet.
I would also keep in mind that this is everybody's first year of eligibility. All these people we're talking about right now. Just because they don't get voted in this year doesn't mean that they're never going to get in.
First balloters are not actually as common as you would think.
Oh no.
Except for Reed Duke.
Except
Reed Duke, Josh Utter-Layton,
Yeah.
LSV, Finkel. There's a handful of them, but
Yeah.
it doesn't happen all the time.
Next up, we have Pascal Maynard from Canada. So he's nice.
Tarmogoyf aficionado.
Yeah. So the story there, if you don't know it, is very strong player. Only 2 top finishes. He is probably best known for picking a foil Tarmogoyf in the top 8 of a draft that didn't go in his deck, and
It was GP Vegas.
it
too.
was GP
It was
Vegas.
2015 Grand Prix Las Vegas.
Viva Las Vegas.
Yeah.
We've all been there.
Yeah.
Right,
It's,
right.
We love you for it, Pascal. But again, only 2 top finishes. And again, Pro Points not a huge weight to it, but he is a North American with fewer than 300 Pro Points, which again is probably another knock against him. He's unlikely to be voted in this year, but again, another player who's perfectly capable of stringing together.
Yeah,
some
definitely.
finishes.
He's had some stellar results at the Grand Prix circuit, but he really hasn't been able to translate it as much onto the Pro Tours and the Mythic Championships. So, yeah, I think he's pretty far away in my eyes.
Yeah. So those are the 4 that are newly eligible this year, and out of those, Reed Duke, pretty strong chance.
Decently strong.
The others,
I'd say reasonable.
reasonable,
Acceptable.
reasonable.
Yeah.
We'll get some votes.
Yeah.
Lock it in. Lock it in. All right.
Or Paul will take your vote away.
I will go in and be like, who voted for not Reed? We'll make a list. on the watch list.
Next, funny thing. Voters cannot vote for themselves, so
Right.
Reed Duke, you're on notice because you're not
Because you
voting.
can't
Because I
vote.
know
Right,
you're
so-
not
I
voting
will
for
make the
Reed Duke.
exception if the votes come out to 99.99%.
Yeah.
I will make that exception.
Then it's okay.
Okay.
All right. So now let's talk about some of the other candidates who have been getting a lot of conversation and notice this year. Candidates who are borderline or very close to certainly being in. It's not their first year, but their names are certainly appearing on a lot of ballots. And again, we're going to take these in alphabetical order so that there's no secret bias being shown or anything like that.
And by a lot of ballots, there for context, people often will post who they intend to vote for on Twitter or on if they're content creators on whatever content they do.
Right.
So it's not as though we're reading the ballot.
No.
Yeah.
We encourage people
Yeah.
to discuss them openly. First up, Sam Black.
Yeah.
So Sam Black again, four top finishes. That is sort of that borderline. This is the minimum you need to do. But again, one of those is a world championship, which
Right.
Paul said. A lot of pros don't consider that the same as a Pro Tour top 8. Close,
Right.
but just below that, and then 3 Pro Tour third place finishes. That
Yes,
that sort of consistency has got to count for something.
The old triple.
I mean, if those were firsts, he'd probably be in slam dunk, you know. But yeah, Sam, one of those players. I mean, he's been playing forever, and he goes to everything.
Yep.
And he just absolutely loves the game. And one thing that I really admired is just he has a different approach to the game of Magic than many of the other pros. But he's made it work.
Yeah.
And he's had all the success despite that. Even going into the last Mythic Championship in Barcelona, he was like, I am forcing 5-color control every single time.
Yeah.
I don't care. This has worked for me, and I'm going to do well with it. And he went 4-2 with it, And nobody, his pick orders were completely different. So he really just has a way of thinking outside the box that I've certainly been able to learn from, because I am the spikiest of spikes that just really tries to attack metagames, just like, all right, how can I tweak a few cards? He goes, okay, I'm going to just play this completely nonsense deck to try to figure things out. And he's been able to break the format, multiple times before. He had the Blazing Shoal deck. The Blazing Shoal Infect deck that gave him a top 4, one of the top 8 finishes.
Third place finishes, yeah.
Right.
He's watching right now. He's asking the question. Actually, he went 3-3. He just corrected you. He went 3-3.
Sorry, Sam.
I
was trying to give him credit, man. I was trying to give him
Blake, you played against Sam.
I played against Sam Black a long time ago, before he was Samuel Black.
And before you were Blake Rasmussen.
This was, and it was a memorable match for me because I didn't have a ton of success at the lower levels, but this was back when we had regionals in North America. And Sam and I played, I think it was the winner of our match would then play the winning in next round or something like that. It wasn't for the top 8 at any way. And I was playing some Sun Forger homebrew, and
some
he was
helixes.
They were in there. And Sam was playing a deck. I don't remember what the deck was, but Ink Eyes was involved.
Nice.
Anyway, years later, I think this was a year or two ago, I relayed this story about Sam, and Sam remembered the match. He remembered every bit of it. He remembered my mistake at the time, and it's impressive. It's always impressive to me when players have that kind of recall for matches that really don't matter over the course of their career, but mattered a lot to the player at the time. So that was really cool, and it's always given me this perspective on Sam, that he really knows what he's doing in individual games.
And this is one of those cases too where you start looking at all the additional contributions players have made, right? Because he's right there on the borderline, right?
Yeah.
It's like he's been a fantastic content creator for years and years, right? For Star City and stuff, and he just made a lot of great articles, a lot of great content, and he's just been a pretty great ambassador for the game. So I think a lot of those things are things that people are going to consider when voting for somebody like Sam, because he's right there, and that's what a lot of people are talking about.
And if you want more to consider for Sam to vote for him this year, note that he said that regionals that I just cited, favorite deck he's ever played, and he won that regionals.
Of course. Yeah.
So also regional champion, Samuel Black.
So the thing is, I never remember my matches except for mine against Sam Black, which was in the top 8 of U.S. Nationals. It was in the top 4. It was in the top 4, and he did the whole shuffle your whole sideboard into your deck.
Yeah.
And then take out 15 cards.
Yep.
And then, at this point, I played so much Magic. I just knew all the different things that he could have.
Yeah.
But I didn't expect him to have a sudden spoiling.
I covered that
Oh,
match.
you covered that match.
I was on coverage.
Okay.
Yeah,
Oh my God.
I remember
so
that.
I'm playing, and I'm like, okay, I'm going to win here because I just, I can't think of anything that he has. I have a counter in my hand.
Yeah.
I have Cryptic Command in my hand. There's nothing he could do. And he had a split second card and started spoiling and completely blew me out. And then after the match, that was like one of the middle games, but after the match he goes, oh yeah, that was an accident. In my sideboard guide, I did not mean to keep this in. But he just took out 15 cards and then just left that one in, and he got me. And I was like, oh my God, what happened?
I remember that vividly, yeah.
But he was also my teammate for the Team Worlds.
Yep.
One of the my proudest wins is because that was the last time Team USA won one of these Team World Championships. It was me, Michael Jacob, and Sam Black.
Well, and we don't have the answer to this question, but actually Sam's first question when he jumped into chat. This is not going to be the Sam Black show. We're going to move on in a moment. But he did say, speaking of which, how did you, of all people, not make sure that they counted Team World's wins as a top finish? Now, Paul had nothing to do with that.
Oh, serve return.
Let's be clear.
My one crowning achievement, I know.
Yeah. But if
speak
that brings
with
up a
Greg.
point when you're talking about top finishes,
Yeah.
Team Worlds finishes are not counted in
Right.
that number up there.
Yeah.
So it may take a little bit of extra research if in somebody's mind Team World finishes are good enough or are that 0.5
Right.
or whatever, and they
Yeah.
want to
They're
continue
the extra
doing the
thing to
math.
push over.
There may be a little extra research if you want to check out those borderline candidates.
Yep.
Speaking of borderline candidates, and this is a different sort of borderline
Yeah.
candidate, we are going to move on to talk about Marcio Carvalho. So he is a borderline candidate for two very different reasons. On one hand, on stats alone, slam dunk Hall of Famer, and we'd be talking about him as one of the most successful Magic Pro players of all time.
Not just looking at the numbers,
Just
9 top
purely,
finishes.
purely looking at the
That's
numbers.
insane.
However, Marcio has been suspended for cheating.
Yes.
That happened. That is a fact. He was suspended from pro play for cheating. However, since then, he has come back and he has had a ton of success and has done so well that he's even in the MPL right now. So for a lot of voters, you look at his stats, he should be in there.
Right.
Even his stats since his suspension are very strong.
Right.
But for many voters, the line in the sand is, if you have been suspended for cheating, I'm not voting for you.
Right. Yeah, and that's certainly the hot topic, right? Again, looking at his numbers, if you only look at numbers, he's even more of a slam dunk than Reed Duke.
Right.
He has 9 top finishes. It is simply incredible. And the fact that he's been able to string together top 8s. I mean, every single year, Marcio's basically a lock to top 8 one of these events. You know what I mean?
He was second at Worlds last year. Yep.
But just like whatever event he plays in, he's going to be one of the favorites going in. And personally, I believe that since the suspension, I feel like there hasn't been a whole lot of things that's happened. I feel like he's been pretty clean player, and he's put up Hall of Fame worthy numbers in that like 3 or 4 year window since. He's got like 3 top 8s since that time, along with a World's top 8, along with a Magic Online top 4. So the numbers are just ridiculous.
Yeah.
So it's really just a matter of do you think that if somebody's been disqualified, that just automatically eliminates you from consideration, which I can respect. That's something that's people can. But otherwise, do you think he hasn't done it since, and he's just if you want the Hall of Fame to be about getting the best possible players in there, I mean he's got to be up there, right?
Yeah.
He has to be. He in my eyes, in terms of just pure talent alone, he's got to be somewhere in the top 20 players of all time. So.
Yeah, so that's a tough call. We'll leave that one up to the voters.
Yeah.
Next up, we have Javier Dominguez.
Yeah.
So he's been eligible since 2013, but really this is the first year that he's garnered a lot of consideration. And a big reason for that is that 2018 Magic World
The
Championship.
current defending world champion for Magic the
He is
Gathering.
the defending world champion after finishing second at the World Championship the previous year. But again, to Paul's, how high do you rank a World Championship appearance? His 4 top finishes, 2 of them are at the World Championship.
Right.
So, but you were saying also that winning is a different story than just finishing.
There's so many different metrics to consider here because Javier, again, is a borderline case. But all of its success has come kind of recently too, right?
Yeah.
It's just within the last 2 or 3 years, like a meteoric rise in terms of the type of success that he's had. But yes, a win in many people's eyes counts a little more than just a top 8, right?
Yep.
For example, if somebody's won, for example, we talk about 4 top finishes being the bare minimum. If somebody's won 3 Pro Tours, that person is going to be strongly considered, probably getting voted in, right? So it's like 1+. So if you win the World Championships, that means something. That might be close to a top 8. And then he got second the year before. Not only that, he has 2 9th place finishes where he was X and 4 and barely missed out on tiebreakers. So he's had a ton of these just really close to top 8 finishes, along with winning the World Championship. He has a chance to defend his title. He is qualified for next year's for the next World Championships that's coming up. So I mean, he's got to be one of the best players in the world right now, and I think he's got the trajectory. But again, 4 top finishes and only 2 Pro Tour top 8s.
Yeah.
So So that's kind of the big mark or big knock against Javier.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Currently in the MPL.
Yep.
But yeah, so another candidate who's real close. Wouldn't be surprised to see him get in. Wouldn't be surprised to see him just miss. It could go.
I will say this: given his trajectory, if we continue to do the Hall of Fame voting, I mean, he's got that path, right?
Yeah.
Like I don't see him falling off the MPL, and he's just continuing to put up all these top finishes. So, if he doesn't get in this year, it's one of those things where he's just going to continue putting up those numbers.
So you're saying he should probably stick with Magic for a little while longer?
It's
just a little
pretty
while.
good idea. Yeah. I think we're pretty invested in doing the whole esports thing.
Yeah. Next up, we're going to talk about this is probably I'd put this next candidate probably just below Reed in terms of at least conversations, people saying they're going to vote for him. So Brad Nelson, friend of the show, did not win his division split this time. But you'll see he has 5 top finishes. We've been looking at a lot of 4s recently. 5 top finishes. He has that 2010 Player of the Year accomplishment. He recently finished 2nd at Mythic Championship 3. And he's widely considered the best standard player in the world and has been for a few years. Again, lifetime pro points are fuzzy stat,
right?
But 481 is a lot.
Yeah.
And those 5 top finishes are a lot. So thoughts on Brad?
So when I look at lifetime pro points, basically it's more like as long as you're below the minimum threshold.
Yeah.
If you have somewhere around 250, that's fine by me. You know what I mean? But as far as the top finishes goes, I did a little bit of digging. Mm-hmm. He has 3 Pro Tour top 8s, along with the Mythic Championship, 3rd place, which right now some pros are still like not complete because it's not tabletop.
Yeah.
It's a smaller tournament. It's a 68-person tournament. So is that more like a world championships in terms of like what you're trying to weigh in terms of whether or not this person you consider that as a top finish? So I think Brad is also, that's why like some people are saying maybe he's not a slam dunk like we talked about with Reed Duke, because he's got the 3 top finishes. But even if you say this Mythic Championship was half and another event was half, that would be 4, right? And again, having that reputation as the best standard player ever, that's huge, right? There's such a huge focus and emphasis on standard in all of our tournaments, and he's the guy.
Yeah.
He is the best player. So and not only that, I mean, even talking about like that Mythic Championship finals, he went 7-0 in the MPL.
Yeah.
He played against the best players in the world and went 7-0 to lock up a slot. Seth Manfield went 6-1 in that same division and didn't make it into day 2 for free because Brad was the end game boss in standard was there, preventing him from getting there.
Yep.
So,
and you want to talk about historic contribution? I mean, Brad, you saw on the slide 2010 Player of the Year. That was the first ever year where there wasn't a clear Player of the Year where they had to do a playoff.
Yeah.
And Brad won.
Right.
That was the first
and
time
that,
ever.
in terms of historic moments.
Yeah.
That's it. That's in the Hall of Fame,
right?
If we had one of those moments, Hall of Fame.
Right.
But that is one of the seminal moments. I can still picture the image of Brad sweating out
Guillaume Matignon.
Matignon last matches in the event that put them to a tie. Just him going like this. But Brad is, and his community contributions are solid. He has a podcast. He's been a writer.
Yeah.
He's done a lot of things for the community in terms of teaching Magic and talking about standard especially. And so he is a borderline to very strong candidate.
Yeah, very much in the same vein as like Sam Black, as we talked about before in terms of contributions. But I think he's also just had slightly better results overall. So I think Brad is going to be one of the top candidates, like you said, right below Reed.
Yep, absolutely. Next up, and we're going to talk a little bit more about this candidate towards the end of the show when we talk about the future of the Hall of Fame. But Chris Pikula garners a ton of discussion every year.
Whenever Hall of Fame is mentioned, whenever that voting season opens. Yep.
Now, again, let's start with just stats alone. Chris doesn't make the cut.
Right.
He doesn't, and that's been the issue. Now there's some discussion about era weighting of pro points and how there were fewer back in the day and there's more now. So that's one of the reasons why lifetime pro points is a bit of a fuzzy number. But again, 3 top finishes is below the threshold. He hasn't put up results or played for quite a while. You know, his Pro Tour Dallas finish is one of the noticeable ones, and that was in 96, 97. But that's not why he is on most people's minds.
Right.
Chris is on most people's minds because back in the day, cheating was a lot more common at the pro levels. And it was, in fact, considered in some circles, not all circles, but in some circles, to just be an edge, to be just a gamesmanship, one of those things you did to get to the top. And Chris was one of the most, if not the most, vocal people to say, no, this is not okay. We have to clean this up. We have to do something. Here's what we do. And there are a lot of people who will point to pro Magic today and say it would not exist without Chris Pikula's efforts back then.
Yeah, I will say that he was just kind of one of, you know, we have Reed Duke as kind of the model ambassador for Magic now. He was kind of that back in the day.
Yeah.
And his work, you know, allowed, you know, us to just have clean tournament Magic. You know, and that's not to say it was just him as well. You know, there's a group of people that all felt strongly about this, but he was kind of the person also leading the charge with that. And this is the extreme example of getting somebody in because of outside contributions to the game, right? Because if we just had just a Magic Hall of Fame, right? I think he would just be in.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because of what he's done for the game. But you know, there's also just the other side of the coin where people will go, well, no, these numbers are just not good enough to get you there. Yeah. So it really, you know, this is where it gets extremely subjective because yes, if you weigh everything that he's done and count that as a top finish, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because there's so many different metrics to use. Then you could vote him in. But if you want the Hall of Fame to be strictly about performance and results, then he's not quite there.
Yeah. And poor Chris, every time we've changed the rules over the past couple of years, he has made it under the previous threshold, but not made it under the new threshold. Like when we moved the percentage to get in from 40 to 60, when it was 40, he was in the 30s. When we moved it to 60, he made it to 49 or something like that. I don't remember the exact numbers, but it was heartbreaking. Yeah. How close he's come a couple times and hasn't quite made it. And chat is telling me right now Chris was one vote away from being inducted in 2005. Yeah. It's just
I will say this. He actually made a request this time around to not tag him in any Hall of Fame related tweets.
I saw that.
Because his heart can't take it anymore. You know what I mean? He's been so close so many times. So if you do want to talk about it, try to not at least tag his Twitter handle so that he sees the threads.
I believe this is this is the situation for which the phrase "don't at me" was
literally for. Don't at Chris.
Yeah. Next up, we have Jerry Thompson.
Yeah.
So Jerry Thompson is another interesting case because he, like Sam Black, has been around for quite a long time. Eligible since 2012. He's at that sort of borderline 4 finishes, but if you look at the 2 finishes highlighted on there, Pro Tour Amonkhet, Pro Tour Rivals of Ixalan, both in the last couple years.
Right.
And Jerry is another one who is getting a lot of momentum for community contributions. He creates content all over the place. He also has a podcast. He writes. He creates deck list guides. He advocates for players. He was in the MPL until he left to focus on other things. So there's a lot of momentum around Jerry, but again, if you look at his numbers, they're borderline. They are within range of everyone else we've been talking about.
Yeah. So when I think of Jerry, I think he's got the 4 top finishes. Mm-hmm. One thing that stood out to me when I was at least kind of looking through the numbers was his median finish. Mm-hmm. It was 165th.
Okay.
So. Which mean he's had a lot of success recently, but he's been playing a bunch of Pro Tours, and the first 8 years were just kind of rough. He just didn't do especially well, but he's really kind of stepped it up, and now he's got the top finishes. But now it's just a question of has he consistently shown himself to be one of the best players year over year? And I don't know if that's necessarily the case for Jerry, but at the same time, like you mentioned, he's kind of the people's champion, right? He really advocates for the players and you know, wants to do everything he can to kind of support them. And that's why I think he's been garnering a lot of additional attention, because he's got that bare minimum 4 top finishes along with all of his other contributions that he's made.
Yeah, he's certainly a popular player.
Right.
It's just a question of whether the voters think he's a Hall of Fame player.
Exactly.
Next up, Kentaro Yamamoto. So one of the tricky things when we're talking about Japanese players is always the language and regional barriers. So there's a lot of discussion in the community every year, not just this year, but every year, where the English-speaking world doesn't know the non-English-speaking world nearly as well. And again, you look at Kentaro Yamamoto, he's got the requisite stats. You know, he's got the 4 top finishes. He's got the 300-plus lifetime pro points. As you said, though, regional bias means that he, just where they live and where GPs and pro points are available, he's got less access to pro points. He's got the 4th in the 2014 World Championship, 2nd at Pro Tour San Diego. That was back in 2007. So again, borderline here, but a lot of English-speaking people just aren't sure what his contributions aren't sure what he means to that community.
Yeah, absolutely. When you look at Kentaro Yamamoto, just in terms of finishes and kind of, I would say his reputation, like when I get paired against Kentaro Yamamoto, I'm like, man, this is going to be really tough.
Yeah.
He's extremely good at Magic. He beat me on a Molda 4 once, and I still remember.
What?
Yes, it was at a Pro Tour. He beat me on a Molda 4, and I'm like, oh, this just happened. Yeah, I don't want to talk about it, but he beat me on a Molda 4. And yeah, he's one of those players that, like, you know, I've just always respected, and you know, for years I just always thought he's one of the, because he's kind of soft-spoken, right?
Yeah.
He's not a man of very many words, so he doesn't have like this huge persona, so people don't really like recognize him as much. But if you just look at his numbers, I mean, he's got just as good numbers as many of the other people we talked about. It's just, again, he's from Japan.
Yep.
We just don't know as much about him, and I think it is tougher if you are an international player, because you don't get that recognition, and so it feels to me that sometimes they have to do a little bit more. They have to perform a little bit better just so that people consider him.
Yeah.
So if Kentaro Yamamoto had 5 top finishes, maybe then we would consider him. I feel like it's a little bit harder because we just don't know who they are. But I will tell you, from the perspective of a competitive player who used to play you know, on the Pro Tour or whatever, he was one of the people I was most afraid to play against because he was just that good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, we saw a lot of that when Shota Yasuoka was voted in as well. Again, you know, his personality, his contributions, not terribly well known outside Japan, but and his numbers were good, but not like below your mind good. But you saw him play, and you just saw him play so fast and so technically accurate. And he was, when I remember having discussions about him then, he was the pros pro. Right. He was the one other pros looked at and were like, I don't know how he does it. Yeah. I don't know how he plays that well, that fast, with decks that are not necessarily the norm or at the forefront of the metagame. And he is so good that I'm voting for him because I know his talent is there. Yeah,
it's one of those things where if all the players are going, that guy's a master,
yeah,
you know that guy is likely going to get at least many of the votes within the pro community. And that's kind of what happened with Shota, because he didn't have slam dunk numbers, but all the pros voted for him because they were like, yeah, this guy is very, very good at the game. I'm afraid to play against him because he's going to play perfectly and very, very quickly. Yeah. And you know, even with the slowest control decks, he just knows exactly what to do at all times. One of the fastest players you know, on the circuit. So I think similar with Yamamoto. I wouldn't say to the extent that, you know, it was for Shota, where everybody was like, this guy is a stone cold master. But I mean, Kentaro Yamamoto also just a fabulous, fantastic player, and something that I think a person that people should highlight a little bit more. But he just doesn't get that attention because you know, he's not from North America.
Yeah. Also not from North America, but getting recognition because of that is Carlos Romão.
Yeah.
So Carlos Romão has gotten a lot of discussion this year. He's kind of similar to Willie Adel in that he is a giant of the Brazilian Magic community. And there are so many Brazilian pro players who will say, I would not be where I was today. I may not even be playing Magic if it weren't for Carlos. And Carlos, you know, he's got the 2002 Magic World Championship. which really memorable event. He was the 2010 Magic Online champion, which we've talked about. So he's got 4 top finishes, 362 lifetime pro points. He's been eligible since 2008 and hasn't put up another amazing result in the past year. But again, Brazilian Magic would not be what it is without him.
I mean, I don't even imagine what the Brazilian Magic scene even looked like in 2002, right?
Yeah.
When I first started playing competitive Magic, I heard of Carlos Romão because he was the world champion,
Yep.
and I read about how he had to play a certain way to kind of win the title and everything. And just imagine just the sheer number of people that were inspired. They were like, this guy from my country was able to win the world championships.
Yeah.
If he can do it, I mean, hopefully one day I can. And I think that was just an inspiration to all of Brazilian Magic. And now out of South America, I mean, Brazil has, the biggest Magic market, right? And I think it's in no small part to the contributions of Paulo, Willie Edel, and Carlos Romão. And Carlos was the first, you know what I mean? He was the first, Brazilian pro to have that success because he won that world championship.
Yep. And again, you talk about moments in Magic that are at the tip of every historian's tongue that are Hall of Fame Magic moments. That World Championship is one of them.
Absolutely.
Where he flipped the script on how you play the Psychotog mirror.
It still blows my mind because I hate letting people
insane.
draw cards.
And for those who don't know, the common strategy at that time in Psychotog mirrors, Psychotog was a blue-black control deck that used Psychotog to win basically out of nowhere in upheaval, was that you countered things like Fact or Fiction. You countered things like Deep Analysis because if they accumulated more resources, they were going to kill you with Psychotog. Carlos said, no, let them. There are only like 4 cards that actually matter, and they're Psychotog.
Right.
Let them draw as many cards as they want. As long as Psychotog does not resolve, I don't care what else you do.
Right.
And he did that all the way to the World Championship.
Yep. It was
it worked.
It was
worked.
It was pretty pretty ridiculous.
Yep.
And so on top of that, I will say this is going to be me with some personal bias, but just all my interactions with Carlos, he's just one of the nicest, most genuine guys I've ever met.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And if it's close, that helps swing it a little bit for me too.
Yeah.
I think he's getting a lot of support from the Latin American community, and with good reason. He was an inspiration to all those players, and he's got a lot of good numbers. And he's back. He's in the MPL.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Oh,
so he took a bit. He took some time off in the middle to kind of establish a business.
Well, and that's the thing. He
and
wasn't doing
right?
nothing with Magic. He was, in the times he wasn't playing on the Pro Tour or traveling to GPs heavily, he actually was still traveling to GPs because he was part of the community. He was setting up his business.
Right.
He was part of the Magic community. He just wasn't doing the pro player thing.
He was developing his Magic empire,
Yeah.
if you will.
Yes. So that is it for today's notables. Now, just because we didn't talk about someone doesn't mean you can't vote for them.
Yep.
You do you. Vote for whoever you want. Although if you don't vote for Reed Duke, Paul
will take away
Paul will
your
actually
vote.
just show up at your house,
Yeah.
and he will have words.
Yeah.
But we want to spend this last bit of the show talking about the future.
Yeah,
of the
because I
Hall of Fame.
know, Blake, you've been telling me a lot about sort of the conversations internally about what's going on with the Hall of Fame, and obviously we talked earlier about how our entire competitive structure has gone through a lot of changes lately. How did something like that affect the Hall of Fame?
Yeah, so we actually said sometime back in December or something that this would likely be the last Hall of Fame under this current voting structure, and it is.
Yeah.
So this is the last year under the current structure. Now, we don't know what the next structure is going to look like, but we have a lot of conversations going on about what the voting structure looks like, what the hall looks like as a whole. So something, when we talked about Chris Pikula earlier, slam dunk, first ballot, contributions to the game sort of Hall of Fame. That's one of the discussions we're having, is do we want to have a Hall of Fame that not only recognizes pro play, but also contributions to the game, where we would put Richard Garfield, where we would put Brian David Marshall, where we would put Chris Pikula. Those first two, there's no stat line that you can look at and say, well, this is worth 0.75 of a Pro Tour top 8, so that just doesn't exist.
Right.
So we are definitely looking at doing that. Other things we're considering: should there be a nominating committee? If there's no stat line that automatically qualifies you for eligibility, how do people even know to vote for you? So there's a lot we're discussing. It's likely we will not have details on what the new Hall of Fame looks like, excuse me, until 2020, probably.
I do like this whole thing where we don't tell people what's going on until we're ready to tell people what's going on. I do like that. That is nice.
But now I also want to be clear. Don't not vote for someone because the Hall is changing next year and you think they might have a shot next year.
Right,
So
because this is all the just discussion right now.
Yeah.
What ends up might not be this.
So all this talk about, Chris Pikula could fit under this new Hall, don't take that as gospel. Don't take that as me saying, don't vote for Chris, he'll get in next year.
Right.
Don't. If you want to vote for Chris Pikula, vote for Chris Pikula. Whoever you believe is deserving for the Hall, vote them in. Because we are not 100% sure what the Hall is going to look like in the future. We know that the current voting system does not work with our lineup of events. How do you measure a Players Tour and a Players Tour final and a Mythic Invitational and New Worlds and GPs? What matters at this point is a lot different than what mattered when it was 4 Pro Tours and a World Championship every year.
With this completely new structuring of kind of our competitive play structure, we need to figure out what the important tournaments are and kind of put them into a group, and it's going to be tough. So it's going to just take more time for us to actually figure that out. And then when we do, then maybe we'll have something in place. But we haven't locked anything in, so don't take anything from this show. And
No.
Blake said there's a thing next year.
I also
because that is not what we're saying.
No, don't do that.
Don't assume this is the last time you're going to vote.
Right.
Because most of what we've been discussing still has a voting component. There's discussions, should we have 1 Hall of Fame but 2 voting systems to get in? Like, do we, we continue something similar with the pro side, but with the contributors side, we have a nominating committee and talk about things differently that way. We've got a number of models of other Hall of Fames to look at. So we are interested in your feedback
As
in
always.
what you want the Hall of Fame to be. Going on Twitter at Magic Esports, all one word, is a good place to leave feedback. Let us know what you think the Hall of Fame should be, not who should be in it. That's what the voting is for. But what the Hall of Fame itself should be. I'm also going to be at Grand Prix Las Vegas this weekend.
Yeah.
I'm going to be talking to people about how they get their information about Magic the Gathering. You guys are all watching this show, so there's one way.
Nice work.
But
Good job.
I'm also going to be taking feedback on what people think the Hall of Fame should be, how people should get elected, how people should get selected. Because for every Richard Garfield or Brian David Marshall that, of course they're in there, there are other people who are, who you'd need to vote on and who have made contributions to the game, but maybe they get in with a 70% vote. Anyway. Yeah. There's so much to discuss, so much to figure out,
and this is why we're discussing it. This is why it's still under discussion.
I'm actually really excited to tackle this, but we're looking for a ton of feedback because the Hall of Fame is so important to a lot of people, and it's this milestone for pro. It's been this milestone for pro play, and we don't want to take that away. And let me be clear. This is not us wiping away the Hall of Fame and starting over.
No.
If you're in the Hall of Fame, congratulations. You're going to continue being in the Hall of Fame. Not doing that. But this is us acknowledging that Magic is such a bigger thing than it used to be, and the Hall of Fame needs to grow to reflect that. So that's our kind of overall goal. The exact particulars of how we do that is what we're going to be figuring out over the next several months. But in the meantime, if you have a vote for the Hall of Fame, send it in by September 3rd.
Yep.
That's your deadline. Paul already turned his in.
Yeah.
It included
overachiever.
redo. I know.
I voted for Reed.
Steve and I have votes,
Yep.
and I have not sent mine in.
I have not yet either.
I
There's still some
am
things I wanna
voting
consider.
for Reed. There's more research I need to do.
I'm looking into whether or not I can vote for Reed more than once.
Yeah.
Okay. Fair
You
enough.
can't.
You got to make up for the missing
Right,
one
exactly.
Vote,
The
right?
one
Yeah.
vote, next week on Weekly MTG, we are going to have Megan O'Malley and Chris Kao
From the Arena team.
From the Arena team.
Yeah.
They're going to come on and talk about some exciting arena stuff. Other than that, be sure to tune in to coverage of Grand Prix, and actually Magic Fest Las Vegas. I know they're covering more than just the Grand
There's
Prix this
so
weekend.
many things
There's
happening
so-
there. It's
oh my God.
So many things
It's
happening.
insane.
Yeah.
Blake will be at the Commander party.
I will
Yeah.
be. So will many
Yeah.
other people. If you can make it, it's sold out, unfortunately. But if you can
It's
make it,
sold
it's gonna
out.
be-
They made it bigger, and then it's sold out again.
Yeah.
I'm so surprised.
Yeah. So it's going to be an amazing weekend. If you can't be there, check out coverage. Just check out the fun things people are posting on Twitter. I'm going tomorrow, and I'm already jealous of people who are already there. But anyway, thank you for tuning in. Again, share any feedback you have on the future of the Hall of Fame with @Magic Esports.
Thanks
We'd
to
love
Paul
hear
Cheon
it.
for crashing the show
Thanks
today.
to Paul for crashing the
appreciate
show.
Always in for Hall of Fame talk.
Yeah, I mean, we did a gag where you walked out.
But he did
that
actually
is
crash
literally
our
what
rehearsal.
happened.
He
Steve and I
actually
were
did.
doing prep work for the show, and he steps in. He's like, "You guys talking about the Hall of Fame?"
Yeah,
And
I
then
was
he
just
comes
like-
in, looks at our return screen at the graphics. He's like, "Oh yeah, this guy." And we're just like,
Yeah.
"Paul, do you want to be on the show?"
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
let's
Well,
just.
I was just like, I just want to make sure we get the facts right, and we just make sure we put compelling arguments for each of the things, and just make sure
Sure everybody
everything's good.
votes for Reed.
Yeah, make sure everybody votes for Reed. Yeah, I have an agenda, folks.
Yeah,
He does.
he does.
But thank you for tuning in, and we will see you next week.